It is live.
All right, cool. I'm mailing in 10 seconds. Just testing the link.
How long is this webinar?
Hour and a half. All right. Just mailed. Boom. Yeah, so yeah, Craig, I'll do a brief introduction once people start rolling in.
Yeah. Okay.
But basically, it's gonna be New York Times, et cetera, strategy analyst for pros and
I
Wimbledon.
think start with the analyst for the Australian Open. That's a good.
Oh, it's open. Okay, yeah. I mean, I'm basically just gonna do my do an intro, and then if I miss anything, I'll probably be like, what else did I miss? If there's a piece I missed.
Australian Open, ATP, WTA, the analyst for them, New York Times, and
Okay, yeah.
Tennis Magazine.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at it. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think I got it.
Special.
So now this email just needs to go out.
Is he cooking eggs?
Huh?
Is Adam cooking eggs?
I don't know what Adam's doing.
Oh, I'm making coffee.
Oh, okay. Lovely.
So Adam, I'm the one that's everybody sees right now, correct?
Correct.
All right, gotcha. What's up, Robbie? I just first attendee. What's going on, man? And looks like that email went out. Yep, it went out. People are gonna be able to join now. Got first person coming through. Ray just joined too. What's up, man? Like to welcome everybody who's joining so far. We've got Craig O'Shaughnessy. We'll get started in a little bit as people kind of come in, but just wanted to let you know what's going on and welcome everybody. Rick, and everybody, there's a chat on the sidebar, but Rick, I'll let the introduction handle that in a couple minutes. You warm it up, Craig.
Ready.
Cool. We'll give it another 4 or 5 minutes. Let folks roll in.
Beautiful.
Everybody, we're going to get started in just a second, but I want to welcome everybody for this presentation. Really excited to share this material, so just hang tight. We'll get started with Craig in a couple more minutes. Craig, you about good to go? Adam, you about good?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm good. We are already recording.
Cool. Well, it's 6 o'clock right now, so let's give people one more minute, but we're pretty much ready to go.
Beautiful.
All right, man. You ready, Craig?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, let's get going. I want to welcome, first of all, Craig O'Shaughnessy to this this webinar where he's going to teach you how to have a statistical edge over your opponents. And I also, of course, want to welcome everybody who's attending live. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to be with us. I want to briefly introduce Craig and then kick it to him. Craig O'Shaughnessy is a guy I've known for, Craig, what would you say, maybe about a year and a half, 2 years at this point, something like that? Where did we meet again? I can't exactly remember.
That's a good question. I think it was in New York. We corresponded by email for a while, and then I think we finally caught up at the U.S. Open.
At the U.S. Open, that's right. Now, Craig, Craig simply put is the man. He's basically leading the charge in using the wealth of data we've collected on the tennis game over the last 10, 15 years to use that data to help tennis players, whether on the pro tour or recreational players, make better decisions on court. And Craig is the strategy analyst for the New York Times, the ATP, the WTA, and Tennis Magazine. He's the strategy analyst for the Australian Open. We were just down in Australia together, and for Wimbledon. And Craig has just a wealth of data on the winning patterns of play. He's consulted with numerous ATP and WTA players to help them improve their games, and in the process has significantly improved the rankings of many players. And I'm excited to share this with y'all today because I think for recreational players, we don't really often know what the best shots are on court, right? So we kind of go out there and maybe hit our favorite shot, but is that necessarily the right thing to be doing? Or is there another strategy that we could be employing that's going to allow us to have more success on the court? So I'm very excited to have Craig here with us today to share this material. With that in mind, hopefully, Craig, I did you justice with the introduction, and take it away, man.
Well, thank you very much. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Strategy is something that I'm very passionate about. It's from coaching on tour for 20 years. The first match I ever coached on tour was at the 1995 Australian Open, and up until then, it was working with a lot of club players, a lot of recreational players, and the things that I was developing from a strategic standpoint. I'd only ever worked at, say, like a 3-0, 3-5, 4-0 5.0 level, and then had the opportunity to go and test all of that on the Pro Tour, and it's exactly the same. So I think a lot of us at a club level would think that the strategy and tactics that happen on the Pro Tour are vastly different than what you would employ at a club level, and it's simply not the case. It's I can't tell you how many times I'm on court here. I'm in Austin, Texas, is where I live, and I've still working with good juniors and guys and girls at all levels of the game, and the same terminology, the same patterns of play, just completely washed down through all the levels of play. So it's a pleasure to bring them to you, and be here today. So tomorrow, I'm greatly enjoying doing this today. Tomorrow I'm going to speak at the USPTA Texas Coaches Conference, which will be a lot of fun. I'll be receiving an award as the Texas Touring Coach of the Year, which for last year, which is a very nice honor. And
That's awesome. Congrats.
Thank you. And then I go to the USPTR conference in Hilton Head. So looking forward to speaking there on the weekend. But let's get started, and I'm going to pull up the presentation right now. And
as you do that, Craig, just to let everybody know, Craig's going to do his thing. I will be monitoring the chat. So if you guys have any questions that you want to ask Craig about his presentation, just put it into chat. I'm going to keep an eye on it, and then we'll stop periodically to answer questions. But we're not going to stop right away, right when you ask a question. But I'll keep a log of them, and then we can field your questions at the appropriate time. So make sure you jump in and chat. But yeah, man, with that, Craig, pull up the presentation, and we're good to go.
Well, thank you very much. The title of today's presentation is called Patterns and Percentages, and this is, once again, it's something that is derived and learned from coaching players at all levels of the game, and studying the patterns, especially at the top level of the game, and then teaching that all the way through. Hopefully you can see the first slide that's up.
Not yet, Craig. So you probably have to, Adam, why don't you, there's like a...
Yeah, Craig, you just have to enable your screen share by clicking the green button there in the upper left corner of the...
Perfect. Upper left corner, yes, got it. And desktop and start.
Perfect.
Are we good?
Now just put your presentation and you're good to go.
Cool, man. You're good.
You good there?
Yep. All good. Take it away.
Great. Thank you very much. You'll see in the top right-hand corner of that picture a logo, ATP Brain Game Match Analysis. So, one of the very close partners that I have is the ATP Tour, and that's the logo that you may have seen when I write the stories and do the analysis on the bigger matches. So it's pretty much all the Master Series finals, Grand Slam finals, and other big quarters and semis that come along. So it's a real honor to work for the ATP and the WTA, and also this year the 2015 Australian Open. So we're going to have a look at some of the data from that tournament as well. Once again, we're called patterns and percentages, and we want to derive the important patterns and then plug them into your game so that we can make club players and recreational players smarter on the court and ultimately winning more matches. Want to really go straight to the point. What really matters here, and there's, with the advent of analytics, I use a lot of dartfish match analysis. There's an element in there called tagging. I happen to have the good fortune of being at the very first meeting of dartfish. I think it was around 2005 when they included that the tagging into their module. So I was probably the first person to write a tagging panel along with a dartfish representative in Dallas, and we put that together, and that really helped me generate new knowledge that washes right through the sport. So we want to keep things simple, we want to include numbers, and we want to get instant improvement. I want to first start with 10 key principles that kind of form the foundation or the framework of all the patterns and percentages that we're going to look. And everything goes back to, let's win more matches. It's not about, okay, we understand tennis a little bit better, that's fine. We're playing a little better, that's good. All of those things are wonderful. What we're caring about today is winning more matches. The first one is very important to understand that 1 point changes everything in a tennis match. 1% matters, and we want to get one day better. So, the power of one is a very important aspect of tennis. Every day you go out there, it's like, and I had no idea of this as a junior growing up in Australia. I grew up in Albury. We had 25 grass courts is how I kind of, develop my game. But, every single day, if you can just get that one little bit better, like one drop of water in a bucket, that's the best way possible to improve in our sport. When you're behind in a match, you may be down 6-3, 2-0. Ultimately, you're not looking for a huge change. All of that change in the momentum really does start with 1 point. So you're just looking for that 1 point to change the complexion, to change the mindset, to change the momentum. And, it's really not that big. So, one of the things in tennis matches, you're never really out of it if you can just go and find that 1 point. Number 2, you always play 2 matches. And this is very important to understand. There's the match that happens during the point, which is what we spend all of our time on the practice court developing, hitting forehands and backhands and, running around the court and hitting the ball everywhere. But there's another match that's played between the points. The 20 seconds that happens from the end of 1 point to the start of another point is not an inconvenience, and it's not downtime. In fact, it's probably the most important point. It's where the mental side of the game kicks in, the emotional side of the game kicks in. It's where you want to be, focusing on the opponent, understanding what they're doing well and not so well, forming your game plan. And from the emotional side, there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of fear, there's disappointment, there's anger, there's all of those things that you're dealing with. And if you're not good mentally, and if you can't, create a good game plan, and if you're not good emotionally and can't, keep everything together, it's very difficult to be bad in those 20 seconds between the points, and then all of a sudden go out and be good during the point, soon after that. So, I put a lot of emphasis on between the points. On my website, I've launched a couple of products. The first was 25 Golden Rules of Single Strategy. The second was between the points, because it's something that is, so important on a tennis court to be mentally and emotionally strong. Number 3 most important questions in tennis. Who am I? Who are you? And who's the best? Who am I simply deals with you as a player. One of the beauties of tennis, one of the great things of our sport is that, you can have wonderful success. You can form a career being 6'9" or 5'9". You can be left-handed and you can be right-handed. You can be, younger. You can be 18 and be phenomenal. You can be 28 and be phenomenal. We need to celebrate the differences in strategic styles. And it's so important that we recognize who we are. I'll tell you a quick story about that. It was back in 2009. I was coaching Amir Delic on the tour, and he was out with a knee injury. And I was in Dallas, and they have back then it was the $50,000 Challenger of Dallas. Now it's a $100,000 event, just won a couple of weeks ago by Tim Smyczek. We go back to 2009, and 2 guys I know quite well were playing each other in the first round. It was Bobby Reynolds and Kevin Anderson. And I said, well, you know what, I'm not coaching in this event, but I'm going to go along and watch. Bobby was coming off wrist surgery. He'd been out for 6 months. He had a protected ranking. It's indoors. Kevin's 6'9". Kevin is a heavy favorite to win this match. Somehow, some way, Bobby ends up winning in a 3rd set tiebreaker. So I talked to Kevin after the match. I said, let's have breakfast tomorrow morning before you leave town and kind of chat about the match. So we caught up at 8 o'clock and had a good breakfast. And I said to Kevin, tell me about the match. What are your thoughts? And the answers were were vague. They were, I thought I played well. Bobby played okay. I hit this shot well. I didn't do this well. There was no specifics. There was nothing very directional towards a game plan. And I was pretty disappointed with his answer, to be honest. So I said to Kevin, you don't need to be good at everything, but you've got to be good at something. And the only three things that matter in your life are serving, returning, and getting to the net. That's all that matters. So I'm gonna grade you in those three areas from the match against Bobby. And just like in class, A being excellent, and then a B and a C, and an F is failing. So I said, serving, I'm going to give you an F. And he's like, come on, you can't give me an F. I held serve quite often. I didn't lose serve that much. I won a lot of points. I'm like, Kevin, there's more to it than that. There's subtle elements such as, where does Bobby think this serve is going? Where is the ball going to come back? Are you putting the score into the whole equation? And these elements were something that you could very easily see Kevin was not processing. He was walking up to the line. He was hitting a serve. There was very, very little thought involved. I gave him an F. The next element was returning. I said, Kevin, you get another F. He's like, come on, there's no way I get another F. I said, well, on first serves, it's very difficult to do well. Bobby Reynolds has got a very good first serve. So, that's not where my focus was. It was on second serves. And the problem for Kevin is he was backing up on second serves. And the main reason was the size of his backswing on his forehand was identical to how he's hitting ground strokes and how he was hitting returns. So you don't want to go backwards. And all his returns were landing in the service box. It was a pretty easy F. And then lastly, he was approaching. I said, Kevin, you get another F. And he's like, no way. I'm like, well, this one's easy. I mean, you came to the net, 10 times in 3 sets, indoors. You've got the reach of an albatross. You're 6'9". You dominate the net. 3 Fs. So, I summarized everything. I said, Kevin, here's the problem, is that you don't know who you are. The only 3 things that matter in your life, you don't even know what they are, and you're failing at them. So who am I is a monstrous part of the game. Within a year, and at the time Kevin was just outside the top 150 in the world, within a year we had Kevin inside the top 50 in the world. So it's so important to understand who you are. And I just got an email a few days ago from a gentleman in South Africa who had bought the 25 golden rules of singles. He'd put them into practice. He sent me a wonderful email stating that at an older age it's tough to improve, but he's running these patterns and he's playing the best tennis of his life. So it was a wonderful email to get. So as you're contemplating and thinking of this, I want you to kind of look at your game and go, am I playing true to my strengths? Do I know what my strengths are? The size of my body, the speed that I move around the court will all dictate that. Secondly is, who are you? You need to look over the other side of the net and understand the strengths and weaknesses of the opponent. And for a lot of players, this is a huge weakness. They don't get that the most important person on a tennis court is not themselves. It's the person on the other side. And very, very clearly, we, especially at a club level, you guys are going to go out there and put a lot of emphasis on your game and probably on your strokes as well. Am I hitting my forehand well? Am I hitting my backhand well? How's my serve going? And you know what? You're going out there trying to play your A game pretty much every day of the year, and it's almost impossible to do. A far better way to go about our sport is to look over the other side of the net and say, who is this person today? What weapons are they bringing to this fight? How good is their forehand and their backhand? Where does it break down? Is it a Spanish, clay quarter that I'm playing, which, automatically they're going to want the rally higher, so, you can take the rally lower. They're going to want longer points. You can play shorter points. They're going to want to run around backhand, so you can attack them wide of the forehand. It's very easy to kind of figure that out, but unless you're looking for that, it's you're missing out on a wealth of improvement. So it's to summarize that area, you are the second most important person on a tennis court. Don't go out there every day and try and play your A game. make your opponent play their B game. And lastly, who's the best? You know, when I'm coaching on tour or coaching club players, you know, we're all headed towards a pinnacle, you know, which is a top 100, but really, even in the top 100, there's so many levels. So I kind of look at even a top 5. I think even in the top 10, there's a couple of different levels. So a top 5 players in the world, you know, what are they doing? What are their patterns of play? You know, everything has been pretty much done on a tennis court. The top 5 people in the world are basically running the same patterns of play that we can run as well. So, you know, you look at Nadal's strokes and think, well, I can't hit the ball like that, and you know, he's probably the only one in the world that can. But the patterns that he's running is something we can certainly copy, and we're going to talk more about that today. So these 3 questions always resonate at every single level of the game. Who am I? Who are you? And who's the best? Will, are you still there?
Yep, I'm here. I just got to unmute myself, so there's like a hot second on a delay. But yeah, man, this is great stuff.
Terrific. Just making sure you haven't fallen asleep there.
Well, I mean, you know, I was dozing.
Wonderful.
This is awesome. Keep it going, man.
Thanks, mate. Thanks. Number 4, it's, you know, let's keep tennis so simple. There's only 4 parts to it. We've got serving, returning, rallying, and approaching. That's it. Once a point starts, something's going to happen in those 4 areas. So, you know, when I'm on court, working with players at all levels of the game, I'm thinking, what area are we working on? So it's important for you to look at those 4 areas and say, you know what, where am I good? Where am I bad? Where do I need improvement? And spend that time on the practice court in those specific areas. Number 5, is it more important to hit the ball where I want to hit it, or more important to hit it when my opponent doesn't want it? This is a very, very important question. Most players on the planet are going to be in the affirmative in the first part of that question. They're going to go out there and it's going to be all about them hitting the ball where they want to hit it. It is far better. You will have far more success if you have the different view of looking to the other side of the court and saying, today, where does my opponent not want it? How my brain game business, you know, originally started, I did a study on Andre Agassi, and it was parts of 3 matches. And it very clearly showed he had a match against Scott Draper where the primary pattern was to play through the juice court to Scott's backhand, who was a lefty. The other match was against Mark Philippoussis, which the primary pattern was to play through the ad court to the backhand. And the last match was against Yevgeny Kafelnikov from the 2000 Australian Open final, which was number 1 versus number 2 in the world. And the pattern there was clearly, I'm going to run him. He's got a good forehand, he's got a good backhand, so do I. My edge is in fitness. So there was 3 different strategies, 3 different opponents, and you know, Agassi was an absolute master at that. You always want to go out there and try and enforce your will and run the patterns that you like. And you know, 4 or 5 days out of the year, you'll do exactly what you want to do, and you'll have a great day at the office. Everything will be good. But what about the rest? What about all the other players that match up very well against you? So having that different mentality, once again, of looking to the other side of the court and figuring out what they don't want is a really important factor. Number 6, how you hit the ball matters. Where you hit it matters more. I think for a club level, this is a monster. You know, I coached at the T-Bar M Racket Club in Dallas from the end of 2001 to about 2009. And, you know, I was pretty much for the last 5 years that I was there, I was, you know, on court the most of all the coaches there, you know, just doing a ton of lessons with, you know, 3-5 ladies and 4-5 singles guys and 5-0 guys. And, you know, it is so easy in a club culture to get so caught up with how to hit a ball, you know, the mechanics of a stroke. And you see players going out trying to play matches, and all they're thinking about are the mechanics of the stroke. And it just holds you back so much. And I think, too, you know, globally, as I travel around the world, you know, I'm in Australia, I'm in Asia, I'm in Europe, and when you look at all the different tennis cultures, the American tennis culture is very much one of, let's practice hard, let's practice a lot, let's hit the the weight room and get fitter. But I think in general, I think it's fair to say, as a culture, American tennis is really, really good at practicing. They're wonderful people and wonderful players at practicing, not so much about competing and winning matches. I think the rest of the world practices less and plays more matches. And I think they play more matches when they're practicing. Whereas I think American tennis is far more about drilling, drilling, and drilling. So I think, getting away from actually drilling so much and in that practice time in Monday through Friday, play more sets, understand the dynamics of competition a little bit more. You're still working on forehands and backhands and serves, but I think that is a wiser use of time. I think the American culture has gone far too far to that practice side of it. You give it an A plus for practicing, but competing and playing matches and putting W's on the scoreboard, I think there's other countries doing better than that. Number 7. Very simple. Once again, you got winners and errors. I'm not a huge fan of the unforced error column. It's a very subjective column. Somebody sitting on the side of the court is making that up. It doesn't take into account down the other end. Sometimes I'll use it when I'm writing stories to help explain a story better. But just think of tennis very simple. A point's going to end in a winner or an error, and what's happening in that area. Number 8. All points in tennis are not created equal. Some points are simply building blocks to get to the end result. You've got to win 24 points to win a set of tennis. Some of those points basically mean absolutely nothing to the final outcome. And some of them, a 1 point in there will mean everything to that. So, you need to play those points differently. Then, they're not all equal. You don't play them all the same. You don't treat them all the same. So, when those bigger points come along, 4 or 30-40, it is critical that you've already played those points earlier. You know what the patterns of play are working for you, and you must play those bigger points on your terms. And it's not even about hitting an ace or a service winner or even a return winner or even a ground stroke winner. It's simply about playing those bigger points on your terms. Number 9, tennis is a game of primary and secondary patterns. One way of playing tennis is sort of like, I'm going to confuse my opponent. I'm going to surprise them. And I'm going to take this pinball approach and hit the ball all over the place. It's not the best way to develop a strategy. I want you to consider our good friend Ivan Pavlov and his wonderful dog. So the experiment goes, Pavlov's, sitting there and he's about ready to feed his dog, and he says, I'll ring the bell. He's got a bell, and he rings the bell, and then he feeds the dog. And the next day, he rings the bell, and he feeds the dog again. And the next day, he rings the bell and feeds the dog. Well, dogs are pretty smart. And by the 3rd or 4th day, as soon as the dog hears the bell, he knows exactly that food is on the way. So you want to condition your opponent's mind in the same way. I'm going to hit to the backhand. I'm going to serve to the backhand. I'm going to serve to the backhand again. I'm going to do it again. And you will feel when that opponent is starting to get on that tactic. And at that time, right when they think it's going to the primary pattern, and especially the score does not pressure the situation, it's a wonderful time to switch to a secondary pattern, which will typically be to an opponent's strength, and you'll have a very, very easy winner. So primary patterns are typically 7 to 8 times out of 10, secondary 2 to 3, and one of the things that separates players is knowing when to change from a primary to a secondary pattern. And lastly, number 10, let's have a plan. I'm always looking in a match, who's leaning on who's enforcing their will, who's the player on the front foot, who's the one controlling the patterns of play. And a lot of times, having a plan is a big part of that. In Dallas, at T-Bar, where I used to work, I would do that Agassi presentation for during the Challenger, and I'd do it for free for the players, and there'd be, say, 20 ATP players in the room, all ranked between, say, 50 and 500. And we'd watch this Agassi presentation, and Andre would hit a serve out wide in the ad. The return would come back cross court. Agassi takes a forehand and goes goes through the juice court to the lefty's backhand to Draper's backhand, and Draper makes an error. And I turn to the players and say, listen, that whole point was crafted. It was planned before it happened. The serve, which was the first shot, where the return would come back, the third shot of Agassi's forehand, and then that fourth shot of what was the opponent hitting, which was a backhand under pressure on the run, which was the weaker side. So I turn to the players every year, and let's say we've got about 20 players in the room, all doing this professionally. This is how they're putting bread on the table. 50 in the world of 500, and I say to them, how many of you in the room have ever planned the first 4 shots of a rally before it starts? And year after year after year, 0 hands go up in the room. So, just because you see these guys on TV and they hit a great ball doesn't mean that they're the mental side and the planning side of tennis that they've mastered. They certainly haven't. So, I always think even a bad plan is better than no plan at all. And if you kind of think of it like this, imagine in the Super Bowl, Tom Brady goes out into the huddle and says, guys, I want you to line up wherever you want. I don't really care. And then when I get the ball, I'm going to run around for a while, and then I'm going to throw it that way. Well, that would never happen. But in tennis, it happens every single day. It happens on every single point. So I highly encourage you to have a basic plan. And it could be general, such as I'm going to serve wide in the juice, and then I'm going to pound the opponent's backhand. I'm going to serve at the body. I'm going to look to come in on the first available shot. I'm going to go 2 shots to the backhand, and then I'm going to rip a ball down the line of the forehand. It doesn't matter really what the plan is, but at least have something in your mind that involves the serve, the return coming back, your first shot, and certainly their second shot after the return. So, and then how you want the point to end. You will start winning a whole lot more matches just by being a little bit better mentally before that point starts. Excuse me. We're looking for improvement, and we're looking for improvement now. And somebody that is absolutely doing that on the Pro Tour is Roger Federer. So we look to what Roger did in 2013 to 2014, and even at the start of this year. He won Brisbane. He lost to Seppi at the Australian Open. I was at that match watching it. I couldn't believe it. I mean, Seppi certainly played well, but I think Roger left one on the table there. But let's look at 2013. He wins 45 matches. 2014, he wins 72. So at plus 27, he loses 6 less. That's a huge difference in the win column for Roger. If we look at titles, in 2013 he won 1, 2014 he won 5, and the prize money, it's over $6 million difference. So something changed, something is better, and let's try and find out what that was. There's certainly the element of, at the start of 2014, Roger had Stefan Edberg come on board, and immediately Roger started coming to the net more. So that's something that is very tangible, that we can say coming to the net to finish points was definitely a part of it. The second element is I looked at as serving and returning. So everything that you can see on your screen in yellow are serving components, and the white returning components. So there's the numbers from 2013, there's the numbers from 2014, and there's the difference. So we see the white numbers, everything stayed the same, and in fact even got a little worse. So it wasn't the returning side of life that Roger improved upon, but if you look at the serve numbers, everything got better. And the number that doesn't get enough credit is that very first one. The first serve percentage moved 1% higher from 63% to 64%, and that helped wash everything and make everything look cleaner. And if you look down in the very far right corner, the green number, the total points won, and remember, this was a $6 million difference between the 2 seasons. Total points won between the 2 seasons, Roger went from 54% to 55%, a 1% difference. And he won so many more matches, so much more money, more titles, but it's only 1% more. the first serve percentage was only 1% more that helped all of that. So I want to really impress upon you as you play your club matches and your USTA matches and your singles and doubles leagues that tennis is a game of very, very slim margins. 1% means everything in our sport. You know, a point here and a point there are monstrous. So, you know, a lot of times, you know, we'll throw away a serve. Like, you know, let me just go for this serve. You know, it's 2-all 30 love. Let me just pump one, and, you know, it's kind of a throwaway serve. Well, you know what? It's not really. You know, and I did say earlier, all points are not created equal, and some points don't mean that much. But the beauty of tennis is you can have kind of opposing views. Both make sense. So, you know, part of it is you're working towards a master game plan against the opponent, and part of it is, yes, it's not that important towards the overall picture, but you're still putting that jigsaw puzzle together. So 1% is a huge deal in our sport. Federer and Murray, between those 2 years, it was a very good comparison because Federer was rising, Murray was falling. We see Roger was plus in all of his serve numbers. Andy Murray was going backwards. In fact, 6% less service games won 2013 to 14. And overall, we see a monster difference between the two guys. You know, first serve points won 79% to 74%. You know, and remember, you know, these are two guys in the big four. You know, we kind of put them together. You know, Andy's had a pretty good run over the last few years. You know, not so good in 2014. He had a good run at the end of the year, which got him into the London Tour Finals. But as you can see here, overall, you know, it's not that difficult to figure out why is Andy Murray struggling. These serve numbers have fallen off a cliff, and simply going out and working more on serves, working more on serve targets, hitting it better, having more confidence in it is a big part of getting him back to where he needs to be. Question for you. Career points won. Who's the best? What is the percentage of career points won? So, you know, we know career matches. We've got career matches, then you've got sets, then you've got games, but we're only looking at points here, the very smallest denominator. So the best, you know, you've got Serena on the women's side, you've got Roger, and probably Novak and Rafa. You know, they're all in that elite pinnacle level. What percentage? And again, this is the highest number that our sport produces. It doesn't get any better at this. So have a think about it for a second. What do you think the highest number in our sport is over their career for Roger and for Serena and the others? What percentage of points have they won? Alrighty, let's have a look. We've got a few different players here. So we've got Roger, Novak, and Rafa, and then Andy, and then, you know, we've got Nick Kyrgios, who's coming up, the young Australian sensation. He is a monster talent. I was fortunate enough to be on center court at Wimbledon last year when he beat Nadal. You could tell very early on, a few points in, it's like, holy cow, this guy's got all the tools to win this match. And you know, great run of the quarters in Australia. He is the real deal. Duty Seller, you know, a very good player. He's been around for a while. He pops up. He had a very good Australian Open. G. Simon is a wonderful player over time. Dimitrov's getting better. Here's the numbers for these guys' career points won. It should knock you off your chair. 55%, and you know, I like to call 55 as the #1 most important metric in tennis. If you say to me, Craig, I want to be #1 in the world, I know the formula for that. Go and win 55% of all points you play. At a club level, you know, you're taking a 50-50 battle, and you're just shifting it a little. You're shifting it 5% your way, and all of a sudden, you are the most dominant person out there. So once again, we're learning that tennis is a game of very small margins. You know, Kyrgios has had a wonderful start to his career. He still hasn't won half of all points that he's played. For the ladies, it's exactly the same. We've got some very good names there, and we see once again Serena at the top, 55%. I'm very impressed with Simona Halep, who's, very early on in career, has already won 54%. Sharapova's at 53. Sloane Stephens is a household name here in the US, still has only won 49%. So, let's not beat ourselves up so much when we're losing points. Think of it like this. If we have kind of a contract that says, okay, I'm going to be the best person in the country in my division. And, you're probably going to be winning 55% of your points. But at the same time, you've got to say, okay, I've got to be all right mentally and emotionally, losing 45% of all points I play. And that's a big challenge for a lot of us, is that, there's a lot of us that are in tennis that are perfectionists. And, we don't want to lose every point. Well, it's just not reality. You're going to lose a lot of points. In fact, you can be the greatest ever, and you're still going to lose 45 points out of 100. And, it's just the reality of our game. So tennis is not a game of perfection at all. It's a game of patterns, and it's a game of percentages. And 55 is the #1 number I want you guys to go away with today. I also want to look at a couple of other areas of excellence in our sport so that we can really understand the top level as we look to improve our game. So, we've got Rafa at Roland Garros. We haven't seen anything like this from any player ever in our sport. He's won 9 titles out of 10 years. It's just been completely dominant. From a match perspective, he's won 99% of his matches. He lost that one match to Soderling. What percentage of the sets do you think that he's won? So have a little bit of a think about it. He's 99% of matches. Let's go to sets. We're at 80%. So he's lost 20% of his sets, the most dominant player at the most dominant tournament. What about games? %64. That's a lot of games. He's won 64, he's lost 36, he's lost a lot. What about points? Remember, this is Rafa, this is the French Open. No one's owned a tournament more than this. He's only won 56% of his points. Remember, lifetime is at 55. So he's 1% better than his career there. So, you want to be so dominant. You want to win a tournament 9 times out of 10. There's the number that will do it. It does it at Roland Garros. It's going to do it in your 4-5 National League. It's going to do it in your 4-0 doubles league. It's going to do it in your mixed as well. It's simply a game of small percentages. Once again, we talk about tennis is simply winners and errors. That's how points are going to finish. I did a big study at the 2012 US Open. I got all the IBM metrics. For the men, it was 75% of all points would end in an error, and for the ladies, a little bit more at 80. So, this is so important. This is probably the second most important metric we're going to talk about today. I hope all of you guys are writing this one down, is that, there's just so many errors. We play a game of errors. 3 out of 4 points at the elite level of our sport end up as an error. So at a club level, you've got to imagine that level is going to be higher. So here's the problem, is that a lot of you out there have that perfectionist mentality. You don't want to lose points, and you're also gravitating to wanting to hit winners. It's like hitting a winner is the most ideal way a point can end, and it's not. It's making the opponent uncomfortable and having them make an error is by far the most important way that you can have a point end. So, think of it like this. Do you want to be out there on the court 100% of the time chasing 25% of total points, which is the winners, or do you want to spend 100% of your time chasing the 75%? So, I think all of our focus for the matches has got to be much more on forcing opponent errors. So, if I'm sitting here relaying this information and saying, okay, forcing an error and making the opponent uncomfortable is the #1 way to win points in tennis at every level of the game, your question to me should be, well, how do we do that? How do we force an error? How do we make our opponent uncomfortable? It's a very good question, and I'm glad you asked it. There are, in fact, 8 ways, and only 8 ways, that you can make your opponent uncomfortable and force them into an error. So we'll go through them right now. We've got our list of 8, and certainly it involves the court, it involves the ball, it involves you, and it involves the element of time. So just have a think about it for a few seconds here. What do you typically like to do that when you hit that ball, what good qualities of that ball, when it arrives over to the other side of the court, make that opponent uncomfortable and the ball doesn't come back? How do you make them make an error? Here's our list. And the order that this list is in is simply ordered by the court and then the ball, me, and time. So the first thing is consistency. And now, I'll kind of pick some players. Think of like a Leighton Hewitt. Certainly think of like a David Ferrer. I'm getting one more ball back in play, and that creates shot tolerance pressure on the opponent, and they go for a shot they really shouldn't because they know the opponent's not going to miss. So it's anywhere in the court. Then you go to direction, which is kind of left and right. I watched a great match at the Australian Open. David Ferrer beat G. Simon, and Simon was just, he did so incredibly well in that match, going down the line and really attacking Ferrer with direction. So, you got left and right. Then you've got depth, which is primarily back, but it's also the front of the court. Height is simply, low and high, and obviously we've got Nadal attacking Federer high to his backhand. We've got spin, which is heavy topspin or heavy backspin, which will force an error. Power will certainly do it as well. Court position, which is moving up, staying around the baseline, something Nikolai Davydenko used to be incredible at in his prime. It's also like stepping in on a second serve and certainly coming to the net. And lastly is time, which is rushing the opponent and taking their time away. So this is how you do it. This is your very simple roadmap for forcing errors on a tennis court. Consistency, direction, depth, and height are all the court. Spin and power of the ball, court position, and time. Think of this list as kind of like they're all precious gems. There's a ruby, an emerald, topaz, a sapphire. Of course, there's an Australian opal. Everybody loves that. But there's one diamond. There's one of these that is a little bit better than the others. Which one do you think the diamond is? Which one do you think is the most important on that list of they're all good. They're all all-stars, but one of them is the MVP. Which is the diamond? Ladies and gentlemen, depth is the diamond. If you want to gravitate to anything and be good at anything, hit the ball deep. And depth is clearly defined is halfway between the service line and the baseline. So if you put a line there in that back half between the service line and the baseline, any ball in that back half is a deep ball. If you can get the ball deep, you will force more errors. You will make your opponent more uncomfortable than doing anything else. So, the start of points, especially for our, recreational players, our club players, you look over to the other side of the court and you're like, I want to hurt my opponent. And you look at them and they're standing in the middle of the court and you think, well, the first thing I've got to do, it just kind of makes sense, is I'll go to their left, I'll go to their right. I'll just hit it away from them. And in fact, it's not the first thing you should be doing. The first thing you should be doing in every point you play is depth, is I'm going to force my opponent back. I'm going to disarm them. It's like, you're in a bit of a fight, and once you push them back, away from the baseline, you just go over there and take away their weapons. They can't hurt you. The further back they go, the less potent their game becomes. So the first thing we want to do is push back before we start, going, focusing on left and right. We're now going to go through our 4 elements of tennis. We're going to start with serving. We'll go to returning, rallying, and approaching. So let's get stuck into some serving. One of the things that I did is I've developed the strategy of serving is I had to cut the service box up. So we've got 4 spots in the deuce, 4 in the ad. You always start out wide in the deuce court. So when you look to the other side, out wide in the deuce court is position 1. It's always 1 is out wide there. Then you've got 2, 3, and 4 to round out the deuce court, and then 5 through 8 in the ad. I even talk sometimes in halves. So, a 2.5 is dead at the body, hit someone in the ribs. 8.5 is that really sharp angle out there. So what I wanted to know is, with all the players at all the levels, what are the players I'm coaching? Where are they serving? How often are they making it? How often are they winning points there? And certainly, where is the ball coming back, and what shot are they typically hitting? Forehand or backhand is their first shot after the serve, and what's that winning percentage? So the locations were very important. And then I looked to the elite level of the game, and I said, I wonder if Roger Federer has serve patterns. And I thought to myself, well, of course he does. I just don't know them. I haven't read them anywhere. It was back in 2010, and I had tagged in Dartfish these 4 matches at the Australian Open, round of 16 through the final, and I had all the serve location, all 8 spots for all 4 matches. And I thought, I've got the information. Let me just go back and analyze it. This is Roger's quote after winning that tournament. It says, I think it's been one of my finest performances in a long time, or maybe ever. Well, that's very important to know, because we're looking at numbers that are significant for when Roger was playing at his best, when Roger Federer was Roger Federer. He's humming, he's seeing the court clearly, he's imposing his will. These patterns are clear to him. So let's look at deuce court. Only deuce court, only first serves, positions 1 through 4. Where do you think Roger Federer had his favorite serve location, the position he goes the most? In fact, it's twice as much than any other position. Where do you think? 1, 2, 3, or 4, or even a half. So have a guess, and then let's have a look at it. Roger Federer, and again, these are numbers. Federer's not Karlovic. He can't. He's not 6'9". Roger's a little bit more. He doesn't have the biggest serve in the world. He's got to hit his spots well, and it's certainly something that the club players can relate to and certainly copy. Roger's favorite pattern in the deuce court is by far and away position 1, which is a slider out wide. He hit over 50% of his first serves there. He went around 25% down the tee, which was primarily as a secondary tactic when he was ahead in the score and the opponent thought it was going out wide. Smart play. And the others were some serves at the body, trying to jam him up, giving another look as well. The real question is, now we know it's position 1 out wide, why did he do it? Why did he do it? And the answer is because most serves come back, and what he's doing is he's stretching the player off the court. You will never put a forehand under more duress than hitting a wide slider out wide and making them hit that tough stretching return. Roger's typically going to be hitting a forehand, and he's opened up holes in the court. That's why he goes there the most. What do you think it is in the ad court? Is it more middle, or is it more out wide? Well, once again, it's out wide. Almost 50% of first serves go out wide. As a righty, he's going to slide a few more down the tee, and he's still serving at the body. So Roger's primary patterns are wide in both courts. I highly encourage you at a club level to copy those patterns. It's not about serving aces. It's not about hitting bombs down the tee, which you are going to miss a lot and create a lot of exposure for your second serve. Serving out wide, you can make more. You will open up holes. You'll get the opponent on the run. You can hit behind them. You can hit your favorite shot. There are, the benefits just multiply by hitting a wide serve as a first serve and making it. Second serves, the pros, they can hit it anywhere, but primarily they're just going backhand jam. They don't want to mess with the center line. They don't want to mess with the single sideline. It's backhand jam in the juice court. It's backhand jam in the ad court. Let's copy that. It's not about serving double faults, and it's certainly not about serving huge second serves either. Go to a backhand jam. Try and get it into the ribs. Try and jam them up. Try and bring back a weaker return. 8 serve factors. What should you think about right before you serve? So 1 point's ended. You got 20 seconds before the next point begins. It could be 2-0 in the first set. It could be 4-0 in the third set. There are certain elements and certain factors you want to consider before you hit that serve. What might they be? Here's our list once again of 8. What does my opponent think I'm serving? That mental battle is something that, at certain times in the match, these 8 factors will grow in importance or shrink in importance. But where does my opponent think I'm serving is a very important one always. Where do I want the ball to come back? A lot of times with serving, we think of it as kind of a one-way street. But I highly encourage you to think I'm serving here because I want the ball to come back to a certain location. Factor in the strengths and weaknesses. I think everyone probably does that. Look at where the opponent's standing. Factor in what you like to hit. What is your highest percentage serve at that point in time? The natural conditions at that point in time. Where is the wind going? Where is the slope of the court? And the score. Now, the interesting thing is that the first 4 only involve the other side of the court, and 6 of the 8 involve the other side of the court. So once again, players that focus too much on themselves and only what they want to do, they miss out on this. 6 of the 8 involve the other side. You've got to get your head wrapped around the opponent, which will help you so much in serving well and picking the right spots to serve. Looking at more excellence at the top of the game. 2011, Novak was 10-1 against Nadal and Federer, won 41 straight, won 10 events, won 70 matches, and won $12.6 million. He was unbelievable during that stretch. And he won 7 straight times against Nadal, which is just, you just can't even imagine that happening. He was unbelievable. But here's the deal, is that in 2010, Nadal did very well against Djokovic. And what happened is once 2011 started, Djokovic evolved. Djokovic got better. Djokovic changed his strategy. And one of the, a couple of very key things that he did is that he stopped Nadal pushing him around on the court through the ad court with Nadal's forehand to Djokovic's backhand. So Novak started moving up closer to the baseline, and he started taking more neutral backhands down the line to make Rafa hit backhands in the juice court. He normally wants to hit forehands over there in the juice court as a runaround. And so here's the deal. It was quite simple and very astounding, is that Nadal was playing the 2010 version of Novak Djokovic, but it didn't exist anymore. The 2011 version won 7 in a row. So it just took Nadal over a year to pick up on that, which was simply amazing. So when Rafa finally beat him, it was in Monte Carlo at the 2012 in the final. And it's got to be said here as well, is that it was also a tournament when Novak's coach back in Serbia, a childhood coach, had passed away. So there were some emotions going around, but he's still good enough to reach the final. And this is very important to show you once again that you need to look over the other side of the court to develop your strategy. So we know Rafa, as a lefty, loves to serve down the tee in the juice, which is position 4. He loves to serve out wide in the ad, which is position 8. So we would expect, as he normally does, a heavy dose of 4 and 8. In the final, he did not serve one single serve to position 4 down the tee. He went out wide to position 1 to Novak's forehand. He attempted 12. He made 9. He won 8. In the ad court, he did not serve one serve out wide in the ad court to the backhand. He went 13 times down the tee, made 8, won 6. So it's just another great example of, if things are not going your way, do something different. Just the very fact that Novak has the best backhand return in the world, why hit it there? You should go more to the forehand. And in this match, Rafa kept going to the forehand and going to the forehand, and Novak was, leaning on the backhand and leaning on Rafa's normal favorite patterns, and Rafa just never hit it there. So that was very much a contributing factor that at a club level, you can copy those tactics as well. The opponent can be thinking about what you want to hit, and you can surprise them with those tactics, and it can go a long way to winning and certainly beating people that may be beating you, typically. Most serves come back. So again, 2012 US Open, overall 68%, which is basically 7 out of 10 men's serves come back, and for the ladies, it was 3 out of 4 serves come back. So what you want to do is you want to run a play which I call serve plus 1, and you want to look for your forehand typically, which will be the biggest stroke. So you don't think of the serve existing on its own. Think of it existing as a serve and the first shot after the serve, and indeed the same for the return. Return plus 1, serve plus 1. Nadal is the poster child. He is certainly the best at looking for a forehand as the first shot after the serve. He's average, and this is from a lot of matches that I've put through Dartfish. His average is almost 8 forehands out of 10 in hitting as the very first shot after the serve, and his winning percentage is 64%, which is off the charts as a ground stroke percentage. So we're going to get to that very shortly, where we look at the average ground stroke winning percentage, and remember that 64% here. So I think a lot of club players, excuse me, do not at all contemplate, where am I going to serve, and where do I want that ball to come back? And I want that first shot after the serve to be my weapon, which is once again a forehand. So Nadal, it's a hidden metric of his success. If that was only, say, 50%, if he's hitting half forehands and half backhands, there is no way he is the player that we know, the dominant player that we've grown to know over his career. This is a major part of his domination. Here's a few examples of some matches. Aussie Open against Federer is 73%. Montreal against Raonic was 91%. That Wimbledon final in 2010 against Berdych, that was 54 times he hit a serve and a ground stroke, and 48 were a forehand. And Berdych just kept feeding it. So he was at 89% there. I mean, just monster numbers for Nadal in very, very important matches. Another example from Federer, he's another proponent of a serve and hitting a forehand. So the Wimbledon final against Murray, we love hitting serves out wide of position 1. We love hitting forehands. He hit 26, excuse me, he made 26 first serves to position 1 in that match. He hit a forehand on 24 of them, and he won 22. The same kind of numbers can wash down to the recreational level as well. And especially going out wide of position 1. Down in Australia just a month ago, I looked at all of the aces. I did a story for the BBC, and they wanted me to look at Murray's ace location and serve speed. So I looked at his serve speed, and his average first serve speed, all of his aces out wide of position 1 were all below his average serve speed, because it's not about power out wide, it's about bending it, it's about sliding it away. And all the aces down the tee were above his average serve speed. So, hitting at those two locations is certainly, very different speeds. IBM looks at 3 different types of strategy. And again, going back to our case study of the 2012 US Open, which again is very, very similar today. Same players, same kind of style. Things are almost identical. They isolate 3 different strategies. You've got a baseline strategy, or you go to the net through approaching, or you go to the net immediately through serving and volleying. So I want you to think about and contemplate which of those 3 has the worst winning percentage? Is it the baseline, approaching, serve and volley? And it will surprise you, the numbers are very, very similar for men and for women. Here they are. The worst by far, in fact, it is a losing proposition, is baseline play. The 2012 US Open, only 7 men, and a very similar number on the women's side, were able to have a winning percentage from the baseline. Djokovic, who could be, one of the greatest of all time from the baseline, was only at a 54% winning percentage. So, you look at this as like, the baseline sucks. It's awful. Why would you ever? I mean, imagine going to Vegas saying, I'm hoping to win 46% of my points there and 46% of my bets. I mean, you're going to lose the shirt off your back. But every single day, recreational players, club players, you go to the practice courts and you spend so much time hitting forehands and hitting backhands. And, it's the lessons that you take. Look around at all the lessons. It's just so focused on baseline play, but it's the worst of all. Approaching 66%, I mean, it's magnificent. And serving and volleying, 68%. And it's almost identical for the ladies too, in fact, a little bit better. I've done a lot of research and a lot of numbers on serving and volleying. And there's a crowd mentality in tennis, and certainly within American tennis, that says you can't get to the net anymore. The strings are too good. The rackets are too good. The athletes are too good. It's just tougher to get to the net. And you certainly can't serve and volley anymore. I mean, that was something out of the 70s that, a prehistoric part of our game that people used to do. Well, guess what? Look at those numbers. Look at the facts. Yes, you can serve and volley. And, even if you do it once a set, if you do it once a game, you do it as a surprise tactic. It's very valid. I mean, even if it's just to freak an opponent out, you should be mixing in serve and volley. It's not dead. Do not believe the crowd at all. Any ball that you can get to the net on, get in on it. And if you can mix in a little serving and volley, it's a fun strategy and it's a winning strategy. It's also a strategy just to try and make an opponent uncomfortable. So 2013, Stokowski, shocks the world and takes out Federer early in that tournament. Stokowski served and volleyed on all 109 first serves. He won 76%. Look at this great primary pattern of serving 85% to Roger Federer's backhand. The other 15%, the secondary tactic, was just, to keep Roger, maybe it's going to the forehand, but he is just dialing in serving to that backhand. What's interesting on second serves, he served and volleyed on 41% of them. He had a higher winning percentage of serving and volleying on second serves than he did on serving and staying back. So, the reason, here's the quotes here. Roger says he was uncomfortable to play against. And yes, this is, we are advocating you should serve and volley, but what we're also advocating is just find anything at all that your opponent doesn't like. And in this match, it was going to be serving and volleying. That was the edge that Sergey found that could, take the rhythm out of the match and get an advantage against Roger. Here's what Sergey said. You can't keep up with Roger in baseline rallies. It's impossible. He feels the grass. He feels the slice. He can do whatever he wants. The only tactics I have is press hard. And, that works at a club level. There's players out there, you can think of immediately that's like, that player's a little bit better than me. If I play them 10 times, maybe I win one, maybe I'll win twice, maybe it's got to take 30 matches in order to get one. Well, you've got to do something different. You've got to go out of your comfort zone and press really hard. I mean, you look at Stokowski, he's not serving and volleying regularly on every first serve, but he did it to press hard and take away the rhythm of the opponent. Here's some general goals for you at a club recreational level. make 60% of your first serve. 6 out of 10 is good. If you're making 70%, you're probably not hitting it hard enough. You're probably not, dining on that. And I looked on the at the 2012 US Open, the players that made 70% and above won less matches than the players that made 50% and below, simply because they just weren't hitting it hard enough. Win 70% of your first serves. Second serves is just a push. If you can win 50%, it's a good day at the office. Save 6 out of 10 break points and win 8 out of 10 of your service games. It's just a fact. You're going to lose a couple. You need to be good at returning to win more than you lose. And speaking of returning, let's move on there. The winning percentage. For the guys on first serve, you're going to win around 28%. Very difficult to really make a lot of headway. But against second serves, you can get up to 48%. So second serves are the real battleground in tennis. You can do more. You can win more. For the ladies, 36 all the way up to almost 54%. So, I don't, put a lot of emphasis in matches on returning first serves. You'll win some, you're going to lose a lot. It's just the nature of the beast. But second serves, first serves, you're defensive. You're trying to neutralize the point. You're trying to get to even. Second serves, you've got to be attacking. You've got to be going after it. Even hitting the big targets right down the middle of the court, like Agassi used to do so well. Have a big target, hit a big shot. Returns made. And this is why Karlovic is not ranked 1 in the world, and Isner is not ranked 2 in the world, and Janowicz is not ranked 3 in the world, and why Andy Roddick's not still playing, because returns come back in play. For the men, it was basically 7 out of 10, and for the ladies, 8 out of 10. It's what are you going to do with that ball? 3 times out of 10, we got an ace, we got a service winner, we got a return error. 7 out of 10, we're playing on. Having a good backhand return is a huge deal. I actually, when I was coaching in Dallas, the club wanted me to play some 5-0 matches. I did. I retired after a while. I went 25-0 at 5-0, and I said that's enough. I'm going to lose pretty soon, and I stopped it. But when I'm playing, my biggest weakness was my backhand return. I've got a one-handed backhand. My problem is I slice it too much. I don't really believe in coming over and blocking it. I think it's got better over time, but when push came to shove, I'd be slicing and it'd be weak. But it's such a massive advantage if you've got a good backhand return. I encourage you guys, if you're taking lessons, take a whole hour just on backhand returns. Here's a match where Djokovic, who's got undoubtedly the best backhand return in the world, against Troicki at Wimbledon, he won 9 of 11 against first serves. He won 8 of 8 against second serves. The big points, the opponents are gonna serve to your backhand return. It's just a fact. You need to work on it. You need to develop it. You can have a massive advantage with a good backhand return. The Aussie Open final in 2012. It's almost identical in the stats. It's a 5-hour match. Nadal says after the match, it was one of the best matches ever. I think it's certainly the best match I've ever seen anyone return with Djokovic in that match. Nadal said he's never played against an opponent. It was over 600 matches Nadal had played in his career to then, and he never had anyone return as well. And in a match that was so even, Djokovic won 83 points, returning Nadal only won 56. So, that's where Djokovic had that hidden edge in that match. I want you to think of having 3 serves in a match. So you're going to have your first serve, and this is Nadal lifetime at Roland Garros. Nadal's winning percentage on his own first serve is 72%. His next highest is actually the opponent's second serve at 60%. Then he's got his own second serve at 58 and the opponent's first serve. So imagine going and playing a match and saying, you know what, today I get 3 serves. I'm going to have a winning percentage on my first, the opponent's second, my second, and then they can have their first. It's a really good way of looking at tennis matches. Look at the blue dots in this picture. This is, it's simply where second serves are going to go. We identified that with Federer. They're going to go at position 3 and they're going to go at position 7, which is that backhand jam. So there's really 2 ways to attack that. You can be like Andy Murray, where you're really stepping in and being aggressive and attacking it with your feet, or you can be like Nadal, and where you're going to run around it. So this is the 2013 Roland Garros final against Ferrer. The deuce court, very difficult for the lefty to run around it. He hits 14 backhand returns as off second serves. And, excuse me, in the out court where he can run around it, he had 13 serves that Ferrer went to the backhand. Nadal turned 12 of them into forehands and just crushed them. So, you know, basically the interesting thing is both Nadal's tactic of running around and Murray's tactic of stepping in produce an almost identical winning percentage of around 56% against second serves to lead the tour. So it really doesn't matter what you do, but pick one and you know, primarily do that and get really good at attacking second serves. You know, I would encourage you, I would walk up, if you regularly take lessons, walk up to your pro and say, all I want to work on today is I want you to hit me only second serves. I'm gonna step in and attack them. And your primary spot is deep middle, and then you can start going a little bit wider, but it will be a very wise use of your hour. We got a few minutes left. We're gonna get through rallying. We're gonna get through approaching. Again, rallying. You know, I'm gonna make some T-shirts up on my site. One of the first T-shirts on my website is gonna say rallying sucks, and you know the percentages support that. It's a very tough way to win points in tennis. So let's find out how we can maximize the percentages as much as possible. Forehands and backhands. You know, they look even. The backhand kind of gets a little help most times with a two-handed backhand, but they are far from even. The winning percentage of forehands for the men, there were 68% of total ground stroke winners were forehands. We play a forehand-dominated game. Forehands are hit bigger, they are hit faster, and as we can see here, over double the amount of winners are with forehands. So, you know, you may like your backhand, but you know, the numbers say forehands are where all the action is. For the ladies, it's almost identical. You know, a lot of times, the crowd mentality says, well, you know, tennis, the ladies' tennis is a backhand-dominated game. Well, that's wrong. It's a forehand-dominated game. Maybe the backhand's comparatively a little better. Maybe they're a little stronger. Maybe they stand up a little better. But the winners are still coming almost 2-1 off the forehand side. London Tour Finals in 2014, November. I was at that tournament. I got the speed numbers from Hawkeye, and we see in that bottom right-hand corner, the forehand, on average, hit by those guys was around 8 miles an hour faster. So it's a bigger ball, and it's getting there quicker, and it's able to rush a little bit more, and it's able to speed through for a winner as well. I want you to think of forehands and backhands like having a sword and a shield. Your forehand is your sword. It is what you attack with. Your backhand is your shield. When you do get attacked, it is typically going to be to your backhand. You want to have a very good shield. Every now and then you can knock someone on the head with it, but ultimately your forehand is what you're going to attack with, and your backhand is what you're going to defend with. I cut the court up in A, B, C, and D. A is always out wide in the deuce, all the way over. You know, A and B is simply the deuce court cut in half, C and D, the ad court cut in half. And the reason I did this is to better understand the back of the court, to help teach the ground stroke patterns. C plus, and let me explain this very quickly. The left side of A, B, C, and D, because there's still big areas, the left side is the minus side, the right side is the plus side. You've probably all played Monopoly. Right before you pass go, you've got the most important piece of real estate on the Monopoly board. You know, it's typically, I think, Boardwalk or Mayfair as it's called. That's the most important piece of real estate. In a doubles match, or excuse me, in a singles match, C plus is the most important piece of real estate. It's where people are going to be looking to take their sword and their forehand and attack the backhand side. They don't want to go near the sideline. They want to attack, but they want to be safe. C plus is that main area. Let's look at the heat map here of the 2013 Miami final. This is Ferrer. This is from Hawkeye. C plus is where he stood for the majority of the time, and the opponent, Andy Murray, was identical. He's in that right side of C. Here's another match, Andreas Seppi, who did so well down at Australian Open, playing an up-and-coming Canadian junior, Braden Schnurz, at the University of North Carolina. Seppi's at C+, and there Schnur is also at C+. It's typically how tennis matches are going to unfold. A player I worked with for over a year was Rajiv Ram. Rajiv, we started in July 2011. He was 272 in the world. A year later, he's 93 in the world. One of the things we got him doing more was serving and volleying, coming in. He kind of lost his way. He didn't know who he was. I said, Rajiv, you're good at this. You've got to come forward. The other way was protecting his backhand. Rajiv's not the fastest guy out there, and his backhand is certainly not one of the better backhands. So he was suffering in a D-to-D rally once points got started. He would lose a lot to lefties. He'd lose a lot to right-handed players with better backhands. And we had to find a way out of this D-to-D pattern. And instead of taking backhands cross-court, see where Rajiv is actually good is in B, which is kind of in the middle in the deuce court. So I said, I've got to get Rajiv out of D, and I've got to get him into B. And the way to do it, we discovered from a series of matches, was if Rajiv takes his backhand middle to B, it almost always boomerangs back to B, and Rajiv can now hit his huge forehand, huge flat forehand to A, which is back through the deuce court out wide. So that's how we did it. That was, getting him to serve and volley more and taking backhands, not cross-court D to D, but D to B, were the two major elements of his improvement for that year. The number one pattern that you want to run from the back of the court, I call a 2-1, which is 2 shots to one side to open up a hole to the other side. So that first one there is to C+, which is, is deep. The first thing you want to do is deep. The second one is going wide, which opens the hole for an unspectacular winner over to the forehand side. So it's kind of like boxing. Well, the 1 and 2 are boxing with the stomach, and that third shot is taking a shot at the head. So a lot of times you're punching towards the backhand, but a lot of the winners will be hit to that vacant forehand side because you've opened up the hole. From the back of the court, you are always looking to open up holes. Another really good strategy is just sticking someone in a backhand cage. The first time they hit a backhand, maybe it's a 90% chance they make it, but what about the fourth one? When they're hitting their fourth consecutive backhand in a row, for a lot of players, particularly at a club level, that fourth backhand is probably a 50-50 battle at best. Too often we're changing directions with no good reason. We're not upgrading in the point. So stick someone in a cage and make them hit 4 backhands in a row. Run around forehands. So, you've got Nadal's the best in the world at it. So for him, his run around is in the deuce court. For all you righties out there, that means you're standing in the ad court hitting a forehand. And it does 3 big things, the run around forehand, instead of hitting a backhand. The first is an upgrade. So you're upgrading from a 32% chance, which is a backhand of hitting a winner, to a 68% possibility, which is your forehand. So you're upgrading to bigger weaponry. The second is you're doubling the target area. That neutral backhand pretty much has got to go cross court, but now you can attack cross court to the ad, and you can attack down the line to the deuce. So you're doubling the target area, and lastly, you're freezing the opponent. That open stance forehand takes away all the anticipation. So you're looking to upgrade, double, and freeze. You can do it, as the heading suggests there, as a serve +1 forehand, or you could do it as just a general runaround forehand. This is what Nadal does. The picture on the right is and this was from a Miami final against Ferrer. The picture on the right is his court coverage hitting backhands, which was 4.1 meters, which wasn't even the entire deuce court. His backhand coverage, which is our picture on the left, is an amazing 10.6 meters, which is the entire court. He went all the way from the alley in the deuce court to all the way to the alley in the ad court hitting forehands. So, maybe the rest of us can't cover that much, but it certainly goes to show you that at the elite level of the game, they will do anything to upgrade that weaponry. Federer is another one who's unbelievable at. He beats Djokovic in Cincinnati, 0-6. That second set wasn't that close. Djokovic hits 108 balls to the ad court, but he hasn't really opened the hole. He hasn't gone to Federer's forehand to A first. It's kind of like immediately going there. So Roger's able to run around. In that final, Roger Federer amazingly hits more forehands than backhands standing in the ad court. And all 108 were directed to Roger's backhand, but Roger says, you know, I want that forehand. I understand the importance of that runaround forehand. I'm going to take 58 of them as a forehand. He ends up hitting 67% forehands for the match, and the majority, 56%, occur as a runaround forehand in that ad court. He also did the same thing against Isner, John Isner, in the final of Indian Wells. John directed 112 balls to the ad court. Roger says, I'm sorry, John, you haven't opened up a hole. You haven't moved me. I'm able to run around them. He takes 72, almost double the amount of forehands as backhand standing in as a runaround on the ad court. He hits 73% forehands for the match, and he hits 66%. You know, basically 2 out of all 3 forehands as standing as a runaround forehand. So I highly encourage you to do that. And remember our A, B, C, D. You know, C is that real battleground. C is that middle area in the ad court. Turn as many forehands, in C as you possibly can to do that upgrade. Rally length, 2015 Australian Open. You know, I just included this in a couple of days ago. You know, rallies aren't that long. For Sharapova, for the entire tournament, rallies that lasted 1 to 4 shots involved 70% of her entire points. The 9-shot rallies, the extended rallies, were only 8% of her entire points. So just think about what you do on a practice court. You go out to the practice court and you hit 1,000,000 balls. You're practicing for the 9+ shot rally length, but it's happening less than 10% of the time. Why spend 90% of your time drilling for a strategy that's only going to happen 10% of the time? So, you know, by these numbers here, I highly encourage you to spend more time serving, more time returning, more time serve +1 forehands, and more time return +1 forehands. Here's the numbers on Nadal. You know, we all think Nadal was after those extended rallies. They still only added up to 14% of his total points. And what's so interesting here, he didn't even win half of them at the Australian Open. He's played 5 matches. So, you know, those numbers show something was a little bit off with Rafa. But once again, look, 64%, the majority of his points are short points. Serve, return, first shot after both of those shots. So spend more time drilling and practicing and taking your lessons in those areas. Lastly, last few minutes, we're going to look at approaching. You know, do we like approaching? Yes, we do. We love getting to the net. The best way to do it in today's game, I mean, the old school way of doing it is approach down the line, forget about that. Taking a backhand approach down the line of someone's forehand is going to get you burnt cross court with a roll. You want to take a heavy forehand, you want to hit it hard, you want to hit it with spin, you want to go to the backhand, which is tougher to hit that flick roll, and especially if you're going behind the player. Make them stop, make them go back. And in general, from studying players, the elite level of players, club players will far more often gravitate to, you know, you'll see an open court and you'll hit to that open court, but it's just an illusion. You know, the ball's going to take 1.4 seconds to get there. The opponent can easily run that down in 1.4 seconds, and you've now created direction that will be hurt at you. The more you play behind a player, the better you will be. First volley is typically going to be around the service line. You want to take them behind the opponent. It's so difficult to hit a winner with a volley from around the service line. So as you come to the net, you got that first volley. Great general rule. Hit it back behind the opponent. Passing shots, you know, we can go down the line. We can go cross court. Your primary passing shot of the best players in the world is a cross court roll, particularly off a forehand where you can flick it, hit heavy spin. You can hit a big target. It doesn't need to be spectacular. It's a great idea to roll. You can even, you know, a lot of times when players come to the net against me, I'm a lefty, I'll hit a little chip cross court. I just want to get it below the height of the net and have the net help me and have them hit up. And a lot of times, if they want to change directions, they're changing directions to my forehand. Guys, that's it. We're finished with our strategy component for today. You know, we covered a lot of ground. You know, we went through serving, returning, rallying, and approaching. You know, I really want to drive home the key principle that what happens on the Pro Tour can be copied at a club and recreational level, and the numbers that dominate us on a Pro Tour can also come down. Those patterns and the percentages also wash down to you guys at a club level as well. So I'll get out of that screen and.
Craig, that was amazing stuff. Thank you so much for taking the time to share. I found it fascinating. I know everybody else watching did as well. Let's field just maybe 3 questions if you have time. I know you got to scoot in a hot second, and I got to go too. But I just want to give people a quick opportunity to ask a few questions. I'm sure folks have a number of questions related to this stuff. A lot of information to digest. So if that's cool, there's probably a slight delay on my video for everybody watching, maybe about 30 seconds. So give people a hot second to get to this segment, and then fire up your question in chat, and then we'll take about 3 questions, and then call it a day. But yeah, Craig, this stuff was great, man.
I don't know whether you can hear me, Will, but unfortunately, I can't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me?
Something just happened, and
hang on, let me see.
And I can't. I can see you quite well. I know you can see me, but I just can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Is the problem? So can you hear me?
I can see you. Yeah, I see you fine, but you can't hear me.
Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Yeah, okay, so you can hear me. So listen, I heard you right at the start. I may have pressed a button here somewhere, but I just don't hear you. So
can you hear Adam? Adam, say something. See if Craig.
Right. Well,
I apologize for that. I'm gonna play around with this for a second and see what I pressed what I've done.
The computer. That would be my guess, because I don't think there's a way to deafen yourself in.
Hang on.
In the webinar application.
Let me see if this works. Well, that's backwards, but.
Any luck there, Craig? Can you hear us?
This is the.
The joys of technology.
That's hilarious. Can't hear us still? Oh my gosh, that's funny. Well, let's give it another minute, and then if that doesn't work, actually,
I've got you.
Oh, you got it?
I'm back.
All right.
My apologies to everyone for that. I have no idea what I did, but now I can hear you just fine.
All right. Cool. So a couple quick questions. Dave asks, is there a magic C+ area? Is it different for a left-hander, maybe like a B- instead?
Yes, it is. Yes, that's a very good question. It is a B-. I'm a lefty myself. If you're playing a lefty and you want to go to the backhand, the C+ area is very specific to attacking somebody's backhand, but not going too close to the sideline to do it. So exactly right, B-.
Gotcha. So it's the safe way to play aggressive and attack.
Yes, it is.
Mark asks, what's the best thing to focus on to upgrade? Footwork patterns? Any specifics to help increase the range across the court to run around to hit a forehand? So basically, yes. What would you recommend technically to improve to be able to execute the strategy you just talked about?
Yeah, it's the best way to do it. It's not about actually. I get that question a lot. It's not about actually being faster. It's simply, there's plenty of time to run around. It's all about anticipation. So when you hit a quality ball, let's say we're playing a righty and we're going to C+. You hit a quality ball that's deep to C+. You'll feel that ball on your racket. And what you need to do is don't recover to the middle. Recovering to the middle is one of the worst things you'll ever do on a tennis court because it robs you from the upgrade. So hit a good ball, and actually move left, because when you think about it, if you hit a quality ball, the opponent's only in neutral at best. They can't attack you down the line, so you just start hanging out over in the ad court, and you're going to feast on forehands over there. So, you know, a lot of times, let's say you were standing in D and you hit a good quality backhand cross court, you actually recover only to D minus, and you bait and encourage the opponent and give them some open court down the line, but it's just an illusion because your quality ball puts them neutral to defensive, and it's almost impossible for them to hurt you. So it's not about being faster, it's just about anticipating and hanging out more in the ad court.
Gotcha, gotcha. Christina asks, at what point do you take the chance to hit a forcing shot that might be lower percentage and lower your overall consistency? For instance, Craig said attack the second serve, but if I hit out, then I lose the point without them having to do anything, instead of just hitting a more normal shot to start the point.
Yeah, listen, you're going to make some errors. There's part of the deal is it's the ratio between the winners and errors. You know, you look at Serena Williams, and she'll have, you know, she's #1 at the Australian Open in hitting winners, but you know, without looking at her, I could almost guarantee that she's #1 at making errors as well. So it's the gap between it. But you've got to stay true to the strategy. So especially with returning serve, you've got to go for it. You can't be timid. You can't go, maybe I'll miss. I mean, maybe if it's a backhand down the line and you're standing behind the, you know, in a rally and you're standing behind the baseline, you can use the percentages there. But if we're talking specifically second serves, you're going to miss some. It's okay. You're going to win far more by stepping in and crushing that return than you will overall by playing timid, or maybe timid is not the right word, but by playing safe. You don't want to be have that safety aspect. And the other big thing that kind of wraps that up is big shots go to big targets. Crush it right down the middle of the court, hit it at the body, make them have to get out of the way. And when the ball boomerangs back to you, it's coming down the middle of the court anyway.
That's a good little phrase there. Big shots go at big targets. So let's do 2 more questions real quick.
Yeah, I got time, no problem.
Todd asks, short approach versus a deep approach. Is there a situation where a shorter approach shot might make some sense?
You've been watching Roger Federer. Yeah, listen, a short approach is great. That little backhand slice that Roger hits, you know, is really good. Make the opponent come up. Make them have to hit up, especially with a backhand where they can't whip that low ball. So you can certainly do that. It was a few years ago, I think it was 2012, I was coaching. Rajiv Ram and Amir Delik were at Nottingham, and Brian Baker came and joined us. It was the year that Brian qualified and made the finals in Nice. He then went to the French and I think won a round and then lost to Simon, and he went straight from there to Nottingham, and it was raining like crazy. We're indoors, we're working on approaching every single day. We're up early, you know, to get our court time. The 3 of us just kept doing a lot of approach drills, and we noticed that the approach shots that went to D+, which is that wide corner, gave up the angle for the person at the back of the court to hit the passing shot down the line and the angle back. What we noticed, because we videoed everything, and we just looked at it during the day, it was pouring rain, and we noticed that the approach shots that went to C+ were far more difficult for the person to hit a passing shot. So the C+ approach is actually a better approach than the D+ approach because of the angle that it gives up. And yes, you can hit that short one as well like Roger does and make them hit up on that too.
That's interesting. It's almost, you get penalized for creating too good of an angle. So you think it's a good shot, but it's not nearly as effective as it seems.
Think of the boomerang. Think of the boomerang. Where, you know, what are the angles that are now opened up?
So Helena asks, just generally, your general recommendation is we should gravitate towards the serve and volley more as a primary pattern?
Let's put it this way. Put it on the plate at least as a secondary pattern, at least there, because on most people's plates it doesn't exist. And, you know, even for ladies, like I've got, you know, I was running an academy a couple of years ago, and I've got all these 12-year-old kids out there, and I'm like, okay, we're going to do serve and volley for an hour. Well, guess what? The first 30 minutes look pretty ugly as they're finding their way with all this. But the next 30 minutes, they're figuring it out pretty quickly, and it looks pretty good. And you know, in ladies tennis as well, you get a quality first serve, especially to a corner, or you jam up, you can serve and volley behind that. The other part of it is it's fun. You know, we're not playing at Wimbledon. We're not playing for you know, big stakes here. You know, Martina Hingis used to do it all the time on a 40 love or a love 40. Yes, you can mix it in. You know, do it once a set. Do it, then do it 4 times a set. Do it when the score helps. Do it at 3 love, 40 love. Start mixing it in then. But it's fun. You know, I grew up playing on grass courts in Australia. I enjoy it. People say it's dead. I'm like, I don't believe them. I look at the stats and I know that it's wrong. You can do it.
Cool, cool. Well, let's do one more question. I'm gonna merge them. What is your #1 tip for doubles, and then just more broadly, how do these numbers translate to doubles?
Yeah, doubles is very different. You know, I've got those 2 products on my website: 25 golden rules of singles, 25 golden rules of doubles. Doubles, you know, serving out wide, we talked about here, is great. In singles, it's not in doubles. I mean, you want to serve down the middle more. The serving team wants to keep the ball in the middle of the court more. The returning team wants to keep the ball, but wants to spread the court and create more chaos. You know, as I talked about, C+ is kind of the most important piece of real estate in a singles match. In a doubles match, it's this virtual area right above the net I call the center window, which is, it's 2 alley widths wide, so the alley's 4.5 feet wide. So imagine 2 alleys right in the center of the court, and then the height of the net's 3 feet, so you go 3 feet above. And it's, think of a doubles court exactly like an hourglass, where you got these 2 big ends with this little neck right in the middle, and the ball passes through there constantly in doubles. So you want to own this virtual area right above the net. It's a 9x3 area, 27 square feet. Of the center window, and the more you own the middle of the court and you assign one of the players to the middle of the court, that's going to win you far more doubles matches. But you know, we'll come back at another time and really get down and explore and simplify doubles. But in a nutshell, the middle of the court is everything.
That's fascinating. So it almost looks like this if I just drew it, like the hourglass.
Exactly.
Right.
And right in the middle, right above the net, is that center window area. And I start with this little video of the Bryan brothers playing Ehrlich and Ram, and of a rally of the tournament. Used to be in Vegas, and all 4 players hit the ball in this rally. It's probably 9 or 10 shots long, and every single shot goes right through that area.
That's yeah, that might be a webinar for a different day, because that actually sounds quite fascinating, and that's the hourglass analogy is pretty neat. Makes a ton of sense just based on the work I've done with the Bryans and everything else I know about doubles. But that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool stuff. So that one I think is a perfect note to end on. Fascinating piece of information. Thank you again so much for everybody who attended. I hope you got a lot out of it. I think, Craig, I can speak, take the liberty to say that everybody did. So, as is my custom, when we sign off, I'm going to give you the opportunity to provide the parting shots for everybody. But I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time. This was fascinating.
Very good. Well, thank you very much.
All right, short and sweet. Made it easy. All right, have a good one, everybody. We're out. Later. Deuces.